very weird place of vulnerability that I don't show very often. I'm a very open person. I talk about a lot of things,
I can't wait to get some sleep soon. These days, I find myself really savoring the quiet of the evenings. That peaceful moment when I finally get home, kick off my shoes, and let the world slow down for a bit. It's become one of my favorite parts of the day. There's something comforting about being able to breathe, reflect, and recognize how far I've come. From a personal standpoint, this is everything I've ever dreamed of. A life and career that once felt completely out of reach. I used to wonder if I was chasing something impossible, but standing here now, living the reality I once only imagined, it's surreal. I hope people understand that their own dreams are just as real and attainable, no matter how far away they might seem. Mine came true when I least expected them to, and that fills me with a deep sense of gratitude and wonder. I truly hope that's what others take from my story, that if you stay true to yourself and refuse to give up, even the wildest dreams can unfold into something extraordinary. You should be incredibly proud of yourself, truly. Thank you for everything, sincerely. I mean that from the heart. I'll even send you a t-shirt as a small token of appreciation. Please do. You've said before that your version of Snow White feels different, more of a 2022 interpretation. What exactly did you mean by that? Well, the original animated film was released back in 1937, and it definitely reflects the attitudes of its time. The story centered so heavily on Snow White's love story with a man who, let's be honest, basically stalks her. It's a strange dynamic when you really think about it. So we decided to reimagine her story for a modern audience. One that celebrates independence, courage, and leadership, rather than waiting around for rescue. This time, Snow White isn't dreaming of being saved by a prince or longing for true love's kiss. Instead, she's driven by a different kind of dream, to become the leader her late father always believed she could be. He told her that if she was fearless, fair, and brave, she could shape her own destiny, and that's the version we wanted to bring to life. But now, despite that empowering vision, it almost feels like her career is collapsing right before everyone's eyes. What was once a fairy tale rise to fame seems to be turning into a public unraveling, and the cost to witness it all. Absolutely nothing. It's unfolding in real time, free for anyone to watch, as the very magic that once lifted her up begins to fade under the weight of controversy and expectation. Her Broadway show has dropped to a pay-what-you-want model, a quiet but telling sign of desperation. Her new movie hasn't even premiered yet, but the backlash has already started to build, spreading across social media like wildfire. Hollywood, once quick to celebrate her every move, now acts as if they barely remember her name. Disney's recent projects have stumbled one after another, and whispers inside the industry claim that Lilo and Stitch, a smaller, less hyped production, actually outperformed Snow White. The planned Tangled remake was abruptly scrapped, and a string of other canceled projects point to a company struggling to recover from the fallout. So what did Rachel do next? Rather than retreat, she tried to reinvent herself. She decided to shift direction entirely, away from Hollywood's glare and back to her roots on stage, hoping to remind the world that she was more than a headline. She landed the lead role in Jamie Lloyd's Evita at the historic London Palladium. It was a dream opportunity, a legendary theater, an iconic show, and a role once embodied by greats like Patti LuPone and Madonna. For a moment, it seemed like her comeback story had begun. But behind the curtain, things weren't as triumphant as they looked. Every career setback she faced, the terminations, the separations, the sudden exits, traced back to a decision Rachel made herself. There was no PR spin, no carefully worded statement. She was done pretending. One insider claims she confronted her longtime manager directly, saying, "You had one job, to protect me. Instead, you let me walk into a war zone blind." Those who know her say this wasn't just about Evita. It was about years of pent-up frustration, years of being told what to say, how to smile, how to behave, and how to stay marketable. Now she's breaking free from that mold. She's flipping the table, cutting strings, tossing out scripts, and rebuilding her career on her own terms. Friends describe her as being in take-back control mode, determined to own her voice again. She's even been overheard saying, "I don't trust anyone who profits off my chaos." But while those close to her see a woman reclaiming her power, Hollywood isn't convinced. To the industry, it looks less like rebirth and more like a breakdown disguised as rebellion. And then, just when it seemed like the dust might settle, something unexpected happened last week in London, something strange that suggests the story we've been hearing. might only be half the truth. Rachel was in the middle of performing Evita when everything suddenly unraveled. One moment she was commanding the stage as Eva Peron, the comeback everyone had been waiting for, and the next, she was gone. Without warning, she vanished mid-show and never returned. The theater quickly released a statement citing illness, but fans and crew members noticed something very different. Footage and social media posts from behind the scenes painted a far more chaotic picture. Staff disputes, visible panic backstage, and what some described as a complete emotional collapse. It left people wondering, had they just witnessed Rachel Zegler's final performance? Picture it, London's West End, July 24, 2025, the iconic Palladium glowing with anticipation. Rachel Zegler, once Hollywood's rising star, now standing center stage as Eva Peron, a role that could have rewritten her story. She needed this show to prove that she was more than Disney's biggest mistake, that she still had the talent, the presence, the fire. But somewhere between the spotlight and the pressure, she broke. This wasn't a simple forgotten line or a brief coughing fit. It was a complete breakdown. The audience sat in stunned confusion for nearly an hour, waiting for an explanation that never came. And when you trace the threads back, it all leads to the same shadow that's followed her for years: the Snow White scandal. What started as a movie meant to define her career instead became the storm that nearly ended it. The same fear and scrutiny that once fueled her ambition now seemed to be consuming her from the inside. So before we get into how everything spiraled that night, let's rewind. For those who haven't been keeping up, here's how it all began. Rachel Zegler, the actress Disney handpicked to bring Snow White to life in their live-action adaptation, seemed like the perfect choice. Young, talented, charismatic, it should have been a dream role. But it turned into a nightmare. During the film's promotion, Rachel's remarks about the 1937 original ignited a firestorm. She dismissed the classic as outdated, criticized its focus on romance, and framed her version as a modern, feminist reimagining. What she likely meant as empowerment quickly got branded as arrogance. The internet exploded. Everyone had an opinion. Generations of fans, from nostalgic grandparents to relentless Twitter critics, united in outrage. Boycott campaigns, hateful comments, and relentless viral videos followed. By the time the Snow White remake finally hit theaters, the damage was done. Attendance was dismal, social media mocked empty screenings, and one viral TikTok even claimed Rachel had to watch her own movie alone. Practically overnight, she went from being Disney's next princess to one of the most criticized figures in pop culture. The unrelenting backlash took a devastating toll. Those close to her later admitted that the pressure, hostility, and online hate began to affect her mental health in serious ways. Even her own team quietly acknowledged that Rachel was struggling, trying to hold together a career that the internet seemed determined to tear apart. She sought therapy in the months that followed, trying to steady herself after the chaos, but the emotional damage had already been done. The online ridicule, the headlines, the constant dissection of her words, it all left scars that no amount of silence could heal. When her once promising movie career came to a grinding halt, Rachel did what many actors before her had done. She turned to theater. The stage offered something the cameras no longer could: authenticity, redemption, and a chance to remind both herself and the world that she was still an artist. It was the perfect plan in theory, a classic comeback move. A stripped-down stage, a live audience, no edits, no filters, just talent. Rachel's team promoted her London debut in Evita as her rebirth, the moment she would reclaim her narrative. On July 24, 2025, at the legendary London Palladium, she stepped into the spotlight as Eva Peron, and for the first time in a long while, things seemed to be going right. The first act ran smoothly. Her vocals were powerful, her energy electric, and the audience responded with enthusiasm. It felt like the old magic had returned. But then came intermission. What was supposed to be a quick 15 to 20-minute break stretched on and on. 30 minutes passed, then 40. Whispers rippled through the crowd as ushers exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, after 45 tense minutes, an announcement echoed through the theater. Rachel Zegler would not be returning for the second act. No reason, no detail, just an abrupt, chilling finality. The audience sat in stunned silence. People had paid good money to see Rachel's long-awaited return, and now, without warning, she was simply gone. What made it all more confusing was the footage that surfaced later that evening. Videos of Rachel backstage before the show, smiling, laughing, looking calm and focused. She had seemed perfectly fine. So what happened between that confident pre-show moment and the emotional collapse that ended her performance? The theater scrambled to recover. In a whirlwind of confusion, the understudy, Bella Brown, who had played Perron's mistress earlier in the evening, was thrust into the role of Eva Perron. With barely a moment to prepare, she was pushed into the spotlight and began the show's most iconic number, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, performing from the balcony before a sea of bewildered faces. The audience, still murmuring about Rachel's disappearance, watched in a strange blend of awe and disbelief as the production continued without its star. That night, Evita went on, but for Rachel Zegler, something had clearly ended. The official statement from the theater claimed that Rachel had simply fallen ill, but fans weren't convinced. Almost immediately, rumors began to spread online, suggesting that something much more serious had happened backstage. Social media lit up with posts describing tense arguments, panic attacks, and even reports of a full-blown emotional breakdown. While none of these claims were officially confirmed, the sheer consistency of the accounts hinted that there was more truth than fiction behind them. And honestly, it wouldn't have been surprising. After enduring the relentless public backlash from Snow White, the pressure of a live performance, and the weight of trying to prove herself all over again could have easily been the breaking point. But here's where things take an even more fascinating turn. In the months leading up to the Evita premiere, Rachel gave a few interviews that revealed just how much she had changed since the Snow White scandal. In one promotional clip for Evita, her tone is noticeably cautious, a far cry from the bold, confident star we once saw during Disney's press tour. She says, "From a personal perspective, this is something I've dreamed of my entire life, and I hope people know their dreams are possible because mine came true, even when I never thought they would. I'm deeply moved by that, and I hope that's what they take away." When the interviewer compliments her, Rachel smiles faintly and replies, "Thank you so much." "Truly, thank you. I'll even send you a t-shirt." It's a small exchange, but one that speaks volumes. Her words are measured, careful, almost fearful of saying the wrong thing. There's a hesitation in her voice, a sense of someone who's been burned by their own honesty before. It's a striking contrast to her earlier interviews, where she spoke freely, joked openly, and didn't seem to care how her opinions landed. The transformation is undeniable. Rachel Zegler, once outspoken and unfiltered, now appears guarded, introspective, and weighed down by the cultural firestorm that turned her into a meme. At this point, the question isn't just about whether her career can recover. It's about whether she can survive the storm she helped create. The bright-eyed Disney princess who once symbolized a new era for the studio has become a cautionary tale of how quickly the internet can build someone up and tear them apart. For those who missed how it all began, let's rewind. Disney's live-action remake of Snow White was supposed to be Rachel Zegler's defining moment, the role that would solidify her as Hollywood's next leading lady. At first, it looked like a dream come true. But then came the interviews. Rachel made headlines for criticizing the original 1937 film, calling it outdated and questioning why a princess would fall in love with a man who, in her words, literally stalks her. Those comments went viral overnight, igniting outrage across generations. From nostalgic fans to online trolls, the fallout was brutal. Boycotts were organized, theaters sat half empty, and viral TikToks mocked her by showing clips of Rachel watching her own movie alone. Practically overnight, she went from Disney's newest star to one of the most criticized figures in pop culture. The pressure and hostility took a visible toll. Even her own team admitted she was struggling to cope and had begun therapy to manage the emotional fallout. When Hollywood's offers slowed and public sympathy ran thin, Rachel made a bold decision to return to the stage. Theater was her reset button, a place to prove her worth not through hype or headlines, but through talent. She joined Jamie Lloyd's production of Evita at the London Palladium, taking on the iconic role of Eva Perron. At first, it worked. The reviews were glowing, tickets were selling fast, and for the first time in years, industry insiders were talking about her potential again instead of her past mistakes. It looked like Rachel was finally turning the page,